Welcome to episode 36 of Building Blocks of Brendan. Today we connect with Chelsie, the founder and CEO of Blender Bites, the simplest way to have a smoothie. What's really interesting about our conversation today is really how Chelsie got the business onto the shelves. Typically, the story is quite slow and really cautious, but Chelsie really hopped, headfirst into this. Having experience within the distribution world and within the food world, she was able to get her products on the shelves with the manufacturer relatively quickly, and it's a pretty impressive story. Also, the company is now public, allowing you to buy shares within Blender Bites. Hope you guys enjoy this episode, learn a bit more about the CPG world, the quick smoothie world, and how really food is taking over the world, funny enough, being one of the fastest growing industries I've seen in my personal opinion. A lot of people on these podcasts have come from the food industry with these CPG goods, and I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. Pick up some Blender Bites at your local store and enjoy a smoothie while listening to this podcast.
My name is Chelsie Hodge, and I'm the CEO and founder of Blender Bites. Blender Bites are organic superfood pucks for smoothies that take all of the mess, prep, and waste out of your daily smoothie routine. They're 100% organic and contain organic fruits and greens, and then we also add functional ingredients, so chia seeds and plant-based vitamins and different things just to sort of elevate your smoothie experience. We're sold in over 850 grocery stores across Canada, including all of Canada's largest grocers, so Whole Foods, Loblaws, Sobeys, Costco East, and many more.
Nice. And I mean, brilliant idea. Makes smoothies a lot easier. How did it really all start? Were you like a smoothie connoisseur? Did you make a lot of smoothies and you said, hey, there has to be an easier way? Like, how did the how did the idea form? Or was it like something that was more of a longer process till built up being a real business?
Yeah. So, I was working at Vega at the time, and that's kind of when the whole plant-based smoothie trend was really taking off. And I just loved the product so much. So I found myself, making 2 or 3 smoothies a day. But, besides the Vega powder, I would add different things like, organic berries and spinach and kale. Sometimes I'd add extra like chlorella and different things. So I just found myself having all these different packages on my counter, multiple bags of, frozen ingredients in my freezer. And I lived in an apartment, so that was kind of annoying because there's no room for real food. So I just, I guess one day in my kitchen, actually, it's almost the birthday. It was January 23rd. The idea came up for me. So it's the birthday of Blender Bites. I just thought of an idea of just, there's just got to be a simpler way to make smoothies that, it doesn't require me to mix all these various ingredients together. So I took, everything I wanted for my smoothie and I blended it up and I actually just poured it into a silicone muffin tin. And then I threw that muffin tin into the freezer that night. And then the next morning I popped out this little puck and I was like, wow, that was really convenient. Took me like literally 5 seconds to make a smoothie. The kitchen wasn't a disaster. There wasn't multiple ingredients I had to go out and buy that morning. So I kind of just got my wheels turning and, I was working at Vega, as I mentioned, and, Charles was a great mentor for me and still is. And so I took the idea to him, the founder of Vega, and I said, Charles, what do you think about this? And he said to me, Chelsie, it's not a matter of if you should do it, it's who's going to do it first. And at that time, the easy smoothie category, hadn't really been born yet, right? So Blender Bites was very first to market in Western Canada. There was another product in Eastern Canada called Evive that came out around the similar time. So, her and I very much built this easy smoothie category in Canada and sort of taken it to where it is today. So, yeah, it was definitely born out of, my own sort of necessity and need. And I thought, well, if it's simplifying my life so much, then why not simplify the lives of thousands of other people and hopefully millions of people? So that's where we're heading to.
The silicone muffin tin was so smart because I had a similar issue where I used to make a lot of smoothies in the morning, but then this was like obviously on university or even like living with roommates. The problem is Blender is very loud. Like a loud thing. So I was like, oh, I'm going to pre-blend it or I'm going to do something. And then I realized then it's going to be just a frozen puck. So I had the same issue. So then I would try to shove everything into like a little Tupperware, but then it was massive because it was just like half an apple. So you really thought that simplest process.
Exactly. And the great thing is, Blender Bites, you don't even need that blender. So you can actually take a puck or 2 pucks and add some hot water or even cold water if you want. It just takes a bit longer. And then you sit it down on the counter for 15 minutes and then just shake it. And it's like ready to go. So by the time you're done, showering, you have your breakfast ready to go. So yeah, you definitely don't need a blender. We have a lot of consumers that are, sort of going more in that direction now, especially with the older crowd. They don't have blenders at home or don't want to use a blender. So it's a great option to make it that way as well.
It's so interesting because like you said, you almost reinvented a whole category, the easy smoothie category.
Yeah, easy smoothie category. Exactly. And then, retailers like Whole Foods now have kind of built like a section around us. And for frozen, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows, like the freezer category is the most expensive real estate and the hardest real estate you can get in a grocery store. So for them to now, take a portion of their freezer space and sort of, create something around us is pretty awesome. So you'll find Blender Bites and you'll find Evive. You'll find, like the frozen coconut water, maybe some spirulina cubes or wheatgrass cubes. So they're like everything that, would be an additional add-on for smoothies is in this one set now. So it's pretty cool.
It is wild how the CPG and the grocery retail, how it's changed so much over the past like 5 years. How like fresh is becoming more popular. That what we used to call like healthier alternatives are now just like more of the standard alternatives. But even within like the 5 years, it went from, especially within Canada specifically, went from like no shelf space to like, there's no refrigeration for this, to now more Whole Foods, more everything else, really being a whole category that has seen tremendous growth. So I've talked to a few people within the world, and they always said it was very challenging like 5 years ago to get anything in Canadian shelves. Now it's like you said, a huge market. They're kind of finally putting stuff for consumers.
Well, in the freezer category too, like the buyers have been dying for innovation. So, like traditionally freezers kind of thought of as, your take-home meals, unhealthy, it's been sitting on a shelf for maybe a few months. So there's been a really negative connotation around the freezer category up until about 2-3 years ago. And it shifted dramatically. So now we're seeing a ton of better for you products like, the healthier ice creams and the low sugar products and, Blender Bites and bone broths. And, it's really become actually a set in the grocery store that a lot of people turn to first. And especially with COVID and, people not wanting to go into grocery stores more than once a week or twice a week, they've turned to frozen to sort of save them, because now they can load up on products. They don't have to worry about expiration dates. It can sit in your freezer for a year and you're good to go. So yeah, it's definitely, I would say, probably the hot topic of the grocery world right now.
The hot cold section. Yeah,
exactly. There you go. Yeah. The hot cold section.
So you start, you have the idea, you're like, hey, this is quite helpful. How does it get started? Was it something you started, like selling on the side? Like, how do you have a great idea? How do you sell pucks?
I didn't really want to waste any time. I knew it was kind of, going to be one of those things where it's like, okay, I need to do this now. And, a lot of people will take an idea and they'll start selling to their friends or farmers markets, or, they'll kind of start off slow, but I knew I needed to hit hard. And I actually, luckily, was working as a distributor rep for an organic food company at the time. So I called on all the retailers like Whole Foods and Fresh Street and IGA and Stong's, and I had, sort of befriended the buyers. So that was really helpful, because then before that, obviously I had to figure out manufacturing. So it took some time. I'd say probably a year and a half. I designed my own packaging. I formulated all the products myself, like literally in my kitchen. And then I found a manufacturing facility that I could rent out on weekends, which was actually just a little popsicle shop in North Vancouver. So I rented out Saturday and Sundays to manufacture. And I, went out and bought thousands of muffin tins, the same one I had in my kitchen from Canadian Tire, and recruited my mom and my 2 aunts. And I said, okay, guys, this is my idea. Will you help me? And they supported me, the whole process, the whole way through. And we manufactured first, out of that little popsicle shop. And just, but my first accounts were like the IGAs and the Whole Foods, right? So I hit the major grocers right away.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a really small distributor, so we sold through them. And yeah, we just hit the Lower Mainland, mostly Vancouver stores. And then I wanted to prove the concept. I think with any new product, you need to sort of, prove that there's consumer demand and that it's going to have, good sales and a strong velocity. So especially in frozen, you're off the shelf in, weeks if it's not selling. So so we got to work, and that was about a year and a half manufacturing ourselves with my family. And then we got a national distributor picking us up to sell all across Canada. And at that point I knew, obviously, our hands were sore. We couldn't make any more pucks. So I found a really large manufacturing plant in Ontario. And at the time it was way too big for us, but it was the best thing that ever happened, because we grew into it so quickly, especially with Costco and, these mass volume stores. So we have a manufacturing plant in Ontario now, and everything's made there. And yeah, it's evolved a lot over the last 4 years.
Oh, wow. That, like you said, that's quite a unique jump, because typically, like you said, it's like all the friends and family, and then, the farmer's market. But it was a unique opportunity, like you said. That's what's also great. I always find, like, being an entrepreneur and having experience within industry to know, like, hey, I know how this works. At least really this is something I can start. One thing that always comes up, and that I always find interesting, is Vancouver, especially in Canada, is like a food hotspot. Like any consumer packaged good, anything related to food, it's like out of Vancouver and BC. Why do you think that is?
I
Like,
know it's kind of funny. We joke about something being in the water out here, but it's true.
mhm,
If you look at a lot of the brands like Nature's Path, Vega, Dea, like there's a
mhm,
tons of them that have started on the West Coast here. So I think we, traditionally, I think we just have more balance in our life. If you look at Ontario and Toronto and,
mhm,
the capital markets and the work
mhm,
schedules and stuff, I think people put more value on sort of maybe health and wellness out here in the West. So
mhm,
naturally there's, some innovators that are looking to, like myself, taking products to
mhm,
market that they, sort of want to come up with the idea themselves and want to take to market. But yeah, it's a good question. We talk about that a lot amongst my CPG friends.
mhm,
I'm personally, friends with quite a few of them, right?
mhm,
So yeah, it's interesting, but it's been invaluable for me because it's just a great
mhm.
way to build a support network, and you can learn off each other and use each other's resources. And it's been incredible to have those people as mentors. So
Yeah, it's always so interesting. Like I said, when I was living in Vancouver and just meeting people, like I'd say maybe a third, like quite a few of the entrepreneurs I met there were within the you know food markets. And the funniest
mm,
thing is I went going to UBC. The story they would sell, the MBA, the story they would sell is the Ernest ice cream and
okay,
Carmen's Donuts story. How they met in school, like they met in a shop, and then it's one of the more UBC successful at the
yeah,
time, like stores. But it was just funny how it's like that's the example. Then out east, it's like, oh, we got tech or like another like industry. It was always such an interesting thing. But I mean, extreme success within the markets, obviously, and really shaping the way for a lot of innovation coming out of Vancouver
hmm,
more and more every year.
yeah.
So one thing with distribution is, is like number of products always matters. Like shelf space, figuring out which ones to do. How did you figure out how many options do you sell when you start? And how did you figure out how many to have? Like how many flavors or
Yeah.
different types of pucks?
Yeah, I think with frozen, it's like the key number. Well, for us, it's been three. I think, getting more than three facings in the freezer set is quite
Mm-hmm.
difficult. And the retailers actually preferred to have two or three just to kind of see how it goes. But,
Mm-hmm.
basically, I just looked at, what are the top sellers of smoothies? And I did my research that way. And I found out very quickly that, the two top selling flavors of smoothies are some sort of berry flavored smoothie and some
Mm-hmm.
sort of tropical flavored smoothie. And I think at the time when I was formulating, green smoothies were really becoming a thing. So that's why we created our green tropical smoothie and then our what's now called Power Berry. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of went with what I know is going to be more mainstream and sell sell the best. And I think you got to be careful not to get caught up in too much of a niche product. I wanted it to be a mainstream product. I didn't want to have too many ingredients in it, which would be unknown to consumers that would scare them off a little bit. I wanted to create um, this product to be sold in grocers across the country. And when I first launched, I thought stores like Whole Foods and stuff would definitely be
Mm-hmm.
my best stores. But in reality, it's actually like the Sobeys and the Loblaws and the real Canadian superstores, and it's more of the mainstream accounts that are producing the biggest numbers for us. And I think it's because there's a lot of consumers that want to eat healthier and make those healthy choices, but don't necessarily know how to make a smoothie, or they try it and it tastes gross. So it turns them off of the concept, right? I put too much
Mm-hmm.
chlorella in, or I don't know what chlorella even is. So,
Yeah.
they try their hardest and they can't quite nail that recipe. And so Blender Bites takes all that guesswork out as well. So, all you have to do now is throw in the puck, the recipe's created for you. You add water.
Mm-hmm.
We rebranded and reformulated our products. So now it's the three new names are Power Berry, Green Detox, and Vita Smoothie. Vita Smoothie being our immune supporting 15 essential vitamins and minerals. So the new names, the new packaging, the rebrands really helped. And then also, tweaking that taste just to make it a little bit more mainstream and appeal to more consumers as well.
That's a big thing. I would like finding a taste, finding how to go making it more mainstream. When
Yeah.
how do you like how do you get that feedback? Obviously, it's you'll have customers out there, but did you have like a test? Like how did you get feedback from the product? Was it really just from the community having individuals try it, kind of, or just based on sales? Like how were you able to come up and figure out how to make the tweaks that like
Yeah.
make a more successful product?
Consumers are quite great at voicing their opinions. And so, I would get lots of emails and, messages over time. And some people, want banana taken out because they have allergies but I just kind of, kept those notes in my head and learned
Mm-hmm.
sort of to recognize what the consumer wants. One of our major accounts, actually, we did some taste testing with the account. So they actually helped us to create our final recipe based on their feedback. So, a lot of these buyers actually want to be involved in the process sometimes. So that's sort of what led us down the path with our final recipes. But yeah, a lot of it's just, sort of feedback from your test market, friends and family, target. I mean, if you're a bigger company, obviously you're going to go out and do some sampling and stuff. I mean, we never did that, but I just used my resources and the people in my network to sort of give me feedback.
For sure. And obviously one thing with any good, especially with a perishable good such as this, sometimes like use a distribution or like starting out can be difficult to figure out like packaging and everything else. Was that a challenge initially, or because you had experience within this world, you kind of were able to get a hold of that? Because typically when I talk to a lot of founders, especially within the space early on, they always found like packaging or figuring out how to like make it so it doesn't like melt before it gets to the distribution sites, or when the like you always hear all the horror stories of like waking up and then having to use your balcony as a freezer sometimes. But how were you able to kind of manage that early on? Was it something you had some experience with, or was it like
I think I just got lucky.
Or a larger challenge?
Yeah, I think I did just get lucky, and I think back to it, just launching the 6 pucks per bag. I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, well, I would like to have enough supply for about 1 week worth of smoothies. Not everybody has one every day. So I thought 6 was, going to last a week. So I thought that was a good number. It was a good even number. And I looked at sort of other products in the freezer set, like for example, a bag of frozen fruit. Okay, well, how many grams is that bag? Let's say 600 grams or 700 grams. So I wanted it to be similar in size, to the other products on the market, so that consumers can do a quick analysis when they look at, price points, especially, like comparing it to the different products. But yeah, I went with 6. I just thought it was the right number. It fit the bag really well. You want it to stand out on shelf. You want it to have a nice presence on shelf. So I went with it. I think, looking back, maybe a bit of a smaller bag. There's thresholds with price points that I've really sort of learned. So, for example, my competitor sits around, $9.99, $10.99, which seems to be like, a really great price point. And some stores have us at $14.99. So I think there's a bit of a threshold on price point, even though, per gram, we're the same price actually per gram because our bag is bigger. But, just having that lower SRP, I think, is really important. So that's where it gets tricky, is just really finding out, okay, what's that magic number that consumers are willing to take that first initial purchase, because they're taking a risk the first time they buy that product. And so they don't want to invest too much money that first time they try it. Right. So having that number is pretty crucial, but it's just a learning experience. You just got to, go with your gut initially and do your research on shelf and then adjust, over time.
I think in your whole story, I think it makes a lot of sense around like, hey, you have an idea, you do some research and you send it out there. But then once it's out there, you have to really adjust and kind of see what the market's saying, what the customers are saying, and kind of go from there. Because I think for a lot of people, it's the first step's always the hardest, and like, oh, it's not completely ready, but nothing. No business is ever like fully perfect when you launch. It's always like, hey, but getting feedback always makes you pivot and change, and it's always good to at least have a adaptive process, which we keep seeing more and more.
It's actually funny that you say that, because a friend of mine years ago always used to say to me, and it was like I think it was a Honda car analogy, and it's just like, just launch. They just launched the car. Like they knew it wasn't perfect, but they just got it on the market. And I think that's kind of what I always remembered. I'm like, just launch the product, get that shelf space, get that distribution. And then, exactly, tweak and use your customers. Like, they're going to tell you what they want. They're going to tell you exactly what's going to sell. So listen to your customers. And, I think we've been through probably 3 or 4 formulation renditions, 3 or 4 packaging renditions already. Like almost every year it's evolving, right? So, yeah, and I think that's so crucial too. It's like that old saying, evolve or die, adapt or die. I mean, you really have to. And that's why we actually adapted with adding functional ingredients into our products, because I could see, especially in the US market, like the whole trend was moving towards functional beverage, right? You have to have functionality now. Even like Evian Water launched their new sparkling water that's enhanced with zinc and magnesium. Like it's just like vitamins, minerals, immunity, functional ingredients is so top of mind for everybody right now. And if you don't have that, then it's going to be, a tough sell.
When you're touching on something I find truly interesting, and we touched on this a bit, but I think a lot of people looking from the outside in, especially within the consumer packaged good, or I guess the food industry, it always seems from the outside, it's like, oh, this is slower moving. But having talked to people and kind of spoken to people within the industry, I think over the past few years, we've seen more innovation here than almost anywhere else in the world. Like with the creation of meat alternatives, with the creation of having more of a healthy lifestyle, like the frozen goods, everything is changing so fast that it is, I don't know the numbers, but probably one of the fastest or adapting industries of any industry I've seen, just because consumer demands are changing so much. And
Totally.
especially with COVID, everyone's lives have kind of changed. And one of those big things have also been the eating habits
Yeah,
for many
absolutely.
individuals.
Absolutely.
Have
Yeah.
you, obviously, COVID's been around for a while now. Do you see a big shift with COVID on like how the, upselling the product, or things had to be changed, or was it pretty relatively similar for you and your, for you along the way,
Mm,
or did it affect distribution as well because of shutdowns?
yeah, I think, it was kind of, I don't know if it was foresight or just pure luck, but I launched our Vita Smoothie, which was the first smoothie product that was
Mhm.
enhanced with vitamins and minerals, and marketed as like a vitamin and sort of almost like a vitamin supplement. I launched that
Mhm.
about 2 months before COVID hit. So I think it was just like really nailing that trend of like,
Mhm.
immune support and people looking for products that are enhanced with vitamins. So that was really helpful. And we kind of started to like make our name that way. But COVID's been great in for us in terms of product demand and consumers going on shelf
Mhm.
looking for products just like Blender Bites. And I'd say, especially with all the young families and parents that are at home right
Mhm.
now homeschooling their kids, they need something super quick, super easy. They don't want to just pop an Eggo in the toaster. They want to have something that's like actually
Yeah.
healthy for kids. And kids love our product too. Even the green
Mhm.
smoothie, they just love the flavor of it. So we get a ton of feedback from consumers being like, you saved the day in such a big way for us,
Mhm.
with the homeschooling. But in terms of running a business and, looking at profits and operations, it's been an absolute nightmare with, freight and raw material cost. And, we bring up a lot of our raw materials from overseas. So,
Mhm.
obviously there's been an impact with being able to get, containers up and different, sort of logistics that way.
Mhm.
So, but I think to myself, if I can build a company at the success we're having, at this rate and the sales
Mhm.
we're seeing during these times, then we can do anything.
Yeah,
So
I know for sure. Yeah,
a lot of
it's
learnings.
so fun. It's so
Yeah.
fun. I remember, and probably a lot of people have this similar experience. Is like when you look at eating healthier, doing anything healthier, like ease of use is such a big thing, or
Yeah.
ease of access. So I remember, like I was like, oh no, like I bought a lot of chicken and rice, and I'm gonna be healthy. I'm just gonna make it. It takes 30 minutes. This is fine, and then you never make it, and you're like,
Yeah.
whoa,
Exactly.
this is like, oh, whatever. I don't want to buy it because it saves so much time. And I think the big thing, especially like you're saying, was like when things got stressful, when homeschooling, the simplest things tend to work very well, and just being able to access this.
Yeah.
And like you said, when I used to make smoothies, I used to make a lot of smoothies, but I was thankful that this was when I was a little bit early, and I could steal fruits and veggies from my family and kind
Yeah.
of use their freezer. And then when I have
Don't
to do
have
it
to pay them.
myself, I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have to pay for all the
Exactly.
mangoes and all the
Yeah.
fancy things. But
Yeah.
then you realize like, okay,
Exactly.
this is difficult. Also they never taste good. So then
Mm-hmm.
really, seeing your product and stuff, I was like, this makes a lot of sense, because if you ever try to make a smoothie, it sounds very simple,
Yeah.
and I mean, you're really just throwing things together. But it's the same thing like making a stir fry. Like what the ingredients are, but the final product is
Exactly.
never the same as you expect.
And that's
Um,
actually a great
so obviously
leeway into
there
food
hasn't.
service.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, yeah, for food service, like that's sort of the reception we're getting to from, a lot of restaurants and cafes and, even like hotels that have banquets and stuff. They don't want to have to, every time
Mhm.
they have a different staff member on shift, they're tweaking the recipe slightly or they're not following properly. And, the end product is different. So Blender Bites actually
Mhm.
has a massive application in the food service industry as well, and we're really pushing hard on that now that COVID's slowly starting to maybe come to an end here. So getting back on the train with
Mhm.
the food service, and reaching out to different even airlines and stadiums, and I mean there's the possibilities are quite endless on that side. So it's applicable for retail and food service.
Interesting. I was just going to say that, like with the ease of use, like has the, I guess, more of the B2B side, or the, like you said, food services, or some of the larger industry organizations side, been a focus, or was when, I guess, when launching the product, was it always was your initial idea more for individuals, or did you have the idea of going to like restaurants or banquet halls or anything like that initially, or did this kind of come from kind of seeing the changes in the market and individuals reaching out?
Yeah, I think from day one I kind of knew that there was going to be a major application in food service,
Mhm.
especially because I used to I started to see like blends and waves and all these different
Yeah.
retailers starting to offer smoothies on their menu. So I would actually go and purchase one and I'd ask to see the ingredient, like what how are they
Mhm.
making these smoothies, and they would just hand me this like Tetra Pak of syrup to read the ingredient deck. And I'm like, oh my gosh, really? And I would look at the ingredients and, the first ingredient's cane sugar, second ingredient's like white grape juice, sugar. Like it was just like sugar, 60 grams of sugar per smoothie, but they're marketing it as this like super healthy, green, like better for you option. And really it wasn't. It was a pig in a wig. So that's kind of when I started to think, okay, maybe Blender Bites would be a great fit for food service too. And so, we actually did a trial with Waves at one point, which went really well. And then COVID kind of hit and sort of, we put pause on that. But yeah, no, for sure. And with the labor shortages right now too, which everyone is experiencing, people just don't have capacity to have staff chopping up fruits and vegetables or mixing different things together in a recipe. So, Blender Bites is a solution on many fronts for food service.
For sure. And I mean, like you said, the journey's been quite amazing. A lot has happened within, especially the past few years. Was there anything that, it's always an interesting question, but was there anything you found maybe easier than you thought it would be kind of starting a business? And was there anything that was surprising or a lot harder than you thought that you kind of took advantage, that you took for granted before kind of really getting into the weeds with it?
The hardest thing for us, and I think there's a lot of people that struggle with this, and it's a really unfortunate thing in Canada, was the financial support from lending institutions and, that first round of seed capital. Like if you're not doing 3 to 5 million in rev, like no fund out there is going to look at you. And, it was sort of like, okay, well then how do I get my first initial, capital to get this going? And if you look at, shows like Dragon's Den, you see this all the time. People are mortgaging their homes 2 or 3 times and, like bankrupting themselves on their ideas. And so I think for me, that was the hardest. It took quite a long time. And I finally found an angel investor that, was a huge smoothie fan and just kind of, realized that the potential for this product could be something major and took that risk on that initial capital. But, that money doesn't go far. I started the company on $50,000, which is absolutely nothing. But so at the same time, not paying myself. So you better have other streams of revenue coming in. So you're working basically 2-3 jobs. You're being as resourceful as possible. You're doing, a ton of grunt work and there's no pay. Like I didn't take a salary for probably 3-4 years. And I bootstrapped and built Blender Bites while I was working my full-time job. So literally 7 days a week, 12, 13 hours a day. So with that also comes sacrifice in your personal life, right? So, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that. I couldn't imagine, some of these entrepreneurs that have kids and families and husbands and, wives. It's just like, I don't think I could do that personally, but I've had to sacrifice a lot along the way. But yeah, going back to that first, that first check, I think is really hard for a lot of people. And, with the success rate of entrepreneurship, I mean, I think the stat is about 95% of small businesses fail. If you are remortgaging your home or using your savings, like that could be life altering for a lot of people. Right. So I'm hoping that we start to see some, some funds and some different organizations that start to invest in the smaller scale, innovation ideas that are turning out to be some of the best products in the market, but, they need a hand up as well, so that was probably the hardest thing for me. The easiest thing, I don't know. I think for me, it was just, I was born knowing that I was going to be an entrepreneur. Like it was something so innately inside me from a little girl. My mom used to say, Chelsie, you never used to play. Like my pictures of me are sitting at a typewriter at 5 years old, typing away because I always just wanted to be working. Or my Barbie dolls had, travel agency. They had a little office set up every day, power suits. Like it's just been in my brain somehow. I was born with it. But so I found that, building the business, although as hard as it is, like sort of came very naturally to me. And being an entrepreneur comes very naturally to me. So I think that was probably, confirmation that I was born to do this, but it also takes a lot of grit, like it takes a lot of, you have to have a strong backbone. And there's moments where I think a lot of people would have quit along my journey, especially as we moved and scaled manufacturing. There was a lot of difficulties with that, but yeah, I think it's just something that I was born to do.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's one of those things I think is that the journey is always like treacherous. There's always like curves and rows. They always show you that graph where it's like success is not a straight line. There's always like twists and turns, but no matter who you are, I mean, and I think at success in anything is like that, but you're always like, that's not going to be me. And then once you're in, you're like, well, okay, there was some twists. There were some bumps. There were some scrapes. It is a little bit difficult, but it's always in hindsight, you're like, okay, it all makes sense. But in the moment, you're like, this is madness. This is crazy. Everything's going on. There's so many things to do. There's so many different roles you have, like so
Hmm.
many different hats you have to wear. I think
Hats, exactly. Yeah.
when I
Yeah. You're
talk to a
not.
lot of,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, when I talk to like a lot of entrepreneurs, one thing they always touch on is like all the hats they have to wear. And people always hear that, but until you're in it, it's like, oh, like how does accounting work, or finance, like financing or
Totally.
costing, or like one of the big things. This would be kind of interesting to hear your opinion on, was that like one thing I always hear is always shocking is people are like, oh, like as a CEO or founder, you have to be like the main salesperson, and like if you
Hmm.
don't like selling, you better learn quick because no
Yeah.
one else is going to talk about your product better than you can. Did you find that like initially, like was that a big challenge, like getting out there, knocking on the doors, having those conversations, or because in your other roles you kind of had some of this experience talking to
Hmm.
distributors before, was that not as big of a hurdle compared to some others?
Yeah, no, and I think even at my role at Vega, I was,
Mm-hmm.
I was in sales and marketing and inside sales, and I was talking to consumers all day long and customers, different accounts and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I've very much been in sales and, different
Mm-hmm.
aspects of my career over the years. So that wasn't too hard for me. And I think because I had those initial connections as a distributor rep, I had those buyers, sort of as friends. I mean, it really is about the relationships you build. And I can say, a major part of my success has been because I had built an incredibly strong network of people over the years. And even, taking Blender Bites public this year, like the capital markets, which has been my background on and off for, 15 years as well. I
Right.
actually found two of my initial investors for Blender Bites, a long time ago, uh, doing IR for public companies back when I was like 24, right? But I built those strong connections that had paid tenfold later down the road in my life. So yeah, I think that's the thing I would stress, the most is just like get out there and go to the trade shows and network. Networking is huge. I mean, your network is really your net worth, and it's
Mm-hmm.
been, it's paid dividends for me in my career.
Mhm. Yeah, and the networking thing, I always even like when you're younger, you hear it a lot, especially with like early in your career, like, hey, network, make
Yes.
connections, and and then it's very awkward and challenging when you start out. You're like, do they just ask the person the coffee? Like, how do I ask someone to like get their job? And it's always awkward, but then eventually realize everyone was in your position as well. They've all been there, being asking someone, being like, hey, how do I do what you do? But then
Hmm.
always looking back, it's like it's funniest thing. It's like I feel like the same thing with like anything else in life. It's like the simplest solution. People say like, oh, how like what can I do to be successful?
Yeah.
Almost everyone's like network.
Yeah.
Start a network, start networking. But it's very hard. It's like the same thing when it's like, how do I get in shape? We'll work out. But okay, but like and everyone will
Yeah.
say something like be active, eat healthy. It's like very simple. That
Yeah.
it's simple to do, but hard to execute. And I think that networking is the same thing. It sounds simple. It's very easy, but it is can be awkward, can be challenging. But like you said, it pays huge dividends down the road because you never know really where your journey will end up and when you will cross paths with someone
Yeah.
again. But
Exactly.
yeah.
And even from my Vega days, Mark Wilson, who was the COO, the Chief Operating Officer at Vega, and basically, helped build Charles build the company.
Mm-hmm.
Mark's actually on our advisory board now, so that's been a relationship for 12 years. That you just and you just got to nurture the relationships, and it's an investment. Like you're investing in
Mm-hmm.
people just as much as you're investing in anything else in your life. So it takes work, and it's something you just got to do if you want to have success down the road.
Mhm. And that was awesome. I just noticed that with your kind of going a little public earlier this year. Wait, this
Yeah, in
year in like
September.
2021 or 2022, like within the last 20 days.
No, we went public in September of
Oh yeah,
2021. So
yeah.
yeah, it's been a pretty exciting journey. I think I did that because I knew that building the U.S. market was going to take a substantial amount of capital,
Mhm.
and going public is it gives you access to a large amount of
Yeah.
capital pretty quickly. So and again, I had been in the capital markets for many years in different applications, and then my two first investors were capital market guys. So it just kind of felt like
Oh.
a
Hmm.
natural transition for us, which has been great and super exciting. And I think, investors, they want to invest in real companies. And there's a
Hmm.
lot, especially in the junior markets in Canada, there's a lot of, companies that don't really have anything yet, or, they're saying they're going to, dig a hole and find gold, but we actually have a real product, and we have
Hmm.
real sales and real revenues, and we're in Costco, and sales are going phenomenally well. So they
Hmm.
get to invest in something tangible, which is always great for
Hmm.
capital markets.
And you touched on this before, and it's so true. Speaking about like other businesses, like having sales solves a lot of issues and gets your foot in many doors.
Yeah.
Like it one because it proves the product works. There's excitement, and it's so much easier to raise or do anything off of because it's
Oh,
like you
totally.
said, it's like hey, here is proof. There's proof in the pudding, another food
Yeah.
analogy,
Yeah.
with it. But it's always like you. But at the same time, I think it's one of those things where it's like everyone knows you should get sales, but it's
Yeah.
challenging because it's difficult as well, and you get a lot of no's and a lot of doors put in your face, and then a lot of times, especially like business is like a little bit like a child, like you're
Yeah. Of
protective of it. You want people to
course.
say no, I don't like it. So you're like, okay.
Oh
But
yeah,
then,
you
like
gotta
you
get
said,
over
you
that
have to
real quick. You
you have to
gotta
push
get
it,
over that.
push it
Yeah,
to get it going.
totally.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but
Well, and
I
that's why,
mean,
launching
mhm,
into Costco East, so we launched into Ontario stores, and obviously Costco likes to do
mhm,
trials. And so, very quickly they extended that into, select stores in Quebec and select stores in the Maritimes. And then very quickly they realized, hey, I think we want to, make this something that we
mhm,
can have on every shelf. So, that for me was such a huge test. It was like, okay, so how is this going to perform at Costco?
mhm,
And tying that back into our last conversation, about price point. The price point
mhm,
at Costco, $15.99 for 12 pucks. That price point, and the sales we're seeing, like that tells me that's our magic number. I mean, it's
mhm,
just like it's such a good deal and such good value for the organic, all the ingredients that we have. So it's almost like,
mhm,
dollar, just over $1 for, a smoothie. So it's incredible. And the sales are reflecting that.
mhm. And I mean, obviously, a lot going on, a lot of success. Kind of, what does the next few years look for you? Kind of, what's the next plan? Is the expansion to the states? Kind of, what does the roadmap look for at least next 5 years?
Yeah, so we're pushing hard into the US market right now. So a lot
Mhm,
of the review periods have started for the larger retailers like Target, HEB, Kroger,
mhm,
Wegmans, Albertsons. So, we're going to be having discussions with them, which is super exciting. And then hopefully, they're going to see some of the success we're having in Canada and reflect that into their own markets. Continuing to build Canada. As I said, we've got more work to do at Costco
mhm,
and in Canada. We're actually going to be on shelf in Costco stores in Texas next week. So I mean, that's just mind-boggling to me. It's just like this idea in my kitchen to the shelves
mhm,
of Costco Texas. Like I just can't wrap my head around that. But that's so exciting for the company, and that's going to be one of our first divisions for Costco. Well, it is our first division for Costco in the U.S. So there's going to be a lot of other divisions watching the success
mhm,
of that, and so obviously building out other divisions in the Costco in the
mhm,
US is very top of mind for us. We've got a direct to consumer platform that we're building out right now because we want to have the ability to ship, directly to households in the US. I think that's very
mhm,
important. The, grocery business has very much evolved to be online, and we want to capitalize on that. And then, as I
mhm.
mentioned earlier, we've got our food service program that we're going to be initiating for different accounts as well. And yeah, there's lots of growth ahead of us. That's for sure.
So exciting! And if people want to follow along, learn more about what's the best way to kind of follow your journey.
Yeah. Well, you can sign up for press releases. We put news
Mhm,
out very frequently as a public company. So, we've always got some sort
mhm,
of update coming out. Our website's just been updated. They can sign up on the investor section of our website right now, and we'll add you to the email list to keep up
mhm,
on all of our press releases that go out. And maybe just go out and try the product and let us
mhm.
know what you think.